music. We can't imagine our lives without it. Today, in modern times, we can easily listen to it whenever and wherever we want to, thanks to modern technology. Even our parents had it easy when they wanted to listen to their favorite songs. We can say that even our grandparents could listen to their beloved music whenever they wanted to, without lifting a finger. But how did people listen to music recorded at times so ancient that even our great-grandparents can't recall them? Let's take a trip down the nostalgic lane of recording and playing of recorded music. In the second half of the 19th century, barrel organs started appearing on the streets, although they'd already been invented in the 16th century in Asia. A barrel organ is a so-called automatophone, or a playing music box. There are different kinds of barrel organs. A set of levers, called keys, is positioned just above the surface of the barrel. Each key corresponds to one pitch. A rod is connected to the rear of each key. The other end of the rod is a metal pin which operates a valve within the wind chest. When the instrument is played, by turning the crank, offsets on the crankshaft cause bellows to open and close to produce pressurized air. And a reservoir maintains a constant pressure. And a worm gear on the crankshaft causes the barrel to rotate slowly, and its pins and staples lift the front of the keys. This causes the other end of the keys to press down on the ends of the rod, which in turn activates the valves and allows air from the bellows to pass into the corresponding pipe. The street barrel could play as many as 7 tunes that varied in the number of tones. This smaller barrel organ has a set of lower tones, and its music evoked jealousy. It's also suggested by the picture on the box. It's amusing to mention that the competing barrel organ manufacturing families of the Rubisches and the Kameniks were actually connected via a marriage and were later making the barrel organs together, though each under their respective name, of course. This particular barrel organ tells a touching story of Žižkov pharmacist, an Austrian with Czech roots, who was drafted in World War I as a medic at the Austrian-Russian war front in a frontline hospital. While trying to save the hospital horse during a Russian attack, shrapnel tore off his right arm and blinded him. The Kamenik family then made a special, custom-made barrel organ for him, on the other side than usual, so he could play it with his left arm. Many veterans actually made a living as barrel organ players, and they were not considered beggars. What is interesting about this barrel organ is that the music was pressed into a tin barrel, but the other mechanisms remained the same. But you wouldn't play a barrel organ at home. Various music boxes started appearing at that time for home use, called polyphones, that worked in different ways. Certain music boxes played steel, zinc, or cardboard round records that rotated by the turn of a crank. The sound was created by the release of pressurized air, and the recordings had openings in them that blew the air into the particular whistle and released their corresponding sounds. Aerophones worked on the same principle, only reversed. The difference was that the record was stationary and the mechanism inside the music box was turned by the crank. It should be no surprise that Ariston and Hierophon had entered into a ragingly bitterly lawsuit regarding the playing system. And Hierophon won. This amoret was very popular at its time, and not just in Europe. It was being exported to the United States with great success under the name Atlas, only the records were still called amorets. The precise Bohemian technology was already praised worldwide back then. Another playing system was introduced by music boxes that used metal combs to create the sounds. The turning record had small protrusions that created sounds on delicately tuned combs or chimes. This beautiful and rare piece could be seen and heard mostly at public places, like hair salons, patisseries, or coffee houses. It played music after a coin was dropped in. It's really the original jukebox. Czech Gustav Řebeček was, in his lifetime, a highly praised and awarded music box maker, who later moved his manufactory to Vienna. Jewelry boxes with a built-in miniature music box gained great popularity as well. This particularly beautiful showpiece plays, besides other tunes, the Czech national anthem. Another unique way to play music were music boxes with paper belts that looked like a punch card. The pressurized air was blown in through the punched holes at the right moment to release a particular tone. With this rare auto harp, the crank is moving the paper punch card belt, releasing air at the precise moment to play the correct string. A scarce rarity is this music box that combines two playing systems, perfectly tuned combs, and a harmonica. In 1805, inventor Johann Nepomuk Melzel combined several music-playing systems into one large music box. An orchestron, a mechanical automatic music box that utilizes several ways of playing tunes at once. It contains several musical instruments, like an orchestra. It's usually comprised of wind instruments or pipes, like an organ, strings, like a piano, and percussion instruments, drums, cymbals, or triangles. This particular orchestrion was seen in a popular Czech TV series, The Cottagers. It was manufactured by Mr. Jevaby and sold by Mr. Klepetage. A predecessor to jukeboxes, to which our grandparents were listening to, was a pianola, a combination of a piano and a music box. It is an automated piano that can play tunes from paper punch card belts. The punch card belt usually moved with the help of a classical clock mechanism through a system of air tubes. The punch card belt usually moved with the help of a classical clock mechanism through a system of air tubes. As a hole moved over a particular tube, the air moved a specific hammer that punched an assigned piano key. Each key connected to its hammer, and its own air tube that corresponded with a particular line of punched holes. Each key had its own recorded music track. The pianola had multiple uses. Piano players were often expensive and unreliable, so the pianola could be simply operated by an employee of the bar, cabaret, or a house of ill repute, chosen by the owner. An entirely different way of sound recording and playing, both spoken word and music, pursued perhaps the most famous inventor of all times, Thomas Alva Edison. He invented and, in 1878, patented the first phonograph that was able to record and play sound. The historic first recorded spoken word was a poem, Mary Had a Little Lamb. The phonograph barrel was made of metal and covered with wax that had grooves carved in it. Small needle went through the grooves and recorded sound as it was played. It's interesting to note that the wax barrel was erasable and re-recordable. But my pillow and me. The phonograph was followed by a gramophone, where sounds were recorded and played on a flat vinyl record using a small needle. The gramophone was invented by an American inventor, Emil Berliner, at the end of the 19th century. His invention ruled the playing of music for the next almost 100 years. As time went on, music boxes were being installed into paintings, statues, or clocks that you can see in our museum. And the chiming clock reminds us that, in time, our great-grandchildren will nostalgically admire the ancient music-playing machines that we enjoyed listening to in our present time.